Welcome to Rise from Lausanne, Switzerland, where I'm going this evening to the cinema for the first time in 20 months. I am Professor Damien Hodari of EHL Hospitality Business School, Lausanne.
And very good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Toronto, Canada. Welcome to Season 4 Rise, Episode 2A. Delighted to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. As always, we are thrilled that you are part of the Rise conversation. Today is a very, very special episode. As always, we're focusing on keeping us all connected and inspired in travel, tourism, and hospitality. But today is a very special one for two reasons. Firstly, but equally, in just a few moments' time, across the border in Boston, IATA is about to kick off a live AGM, bringing together over 290 airlines from 120 countries that carry 82% of the world's travelers. Why is this so important? Because aviation, as we've always said, is the primary artery to unlocking the world of travel and tourism. So it'll be very interesting to hear from the AGM what's happening in the next normal. And in terms of making sure that we do this in a way that's responsible and sustainable, today, the other great reason why we're excited about the episode is we have two exceptional executives in residence who, quite honestly, were talking about sustainable travel long before sustainability became the S word in everyone's travel conversations. So, Professor Hodari, for everyone who's joining us on the Zoom platform that we have, on YouTube Live and on Facebook Live, what's in store today, sir?
Well, when we came up with this episode, you said, let's do something about sustainability. And I think I said, seriously? And that led us to this idea that we really want to explore not just what is sustainability or why this is important. I think we all agree, but is it really the future of the industry? Can we really count on people and companies and governments pushing this forward in the ways that many of us believe it should be? So an honest and frank discussion with our two executives in a little while. We're also excited that this is the first episode in which the Global Wellness Institute will be presenting some of its bespoke research for our audience, and we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But as always, the first thing we like to do is to hear from our audience, and we have a poll question for you, which is going to appear miraculously now. Which of the following are currently most important to you when booking a hotel? So please choose one of the following. And for those of you who were not with us last week for the first episode of Season 4, we've made a slight change, and we're going to show you those results in just a little while. For people watching on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, please, you can write in some comments, and we'll try to address some of those answers in addition to the voting that's taking place on Zoom.
So as we go into where in the world are we? One, as always, it's about making sure that you know what you need to know about what's happening in the world of travel and tourism. Now, before we go into the statistics, as always, we say it's about knowing what's important. And we just want to share with you that this past week, a significant event occurred. And ultimately, it was one that has left the tourism world very much with heavy hearts. Last week, one of the architects of our industry, Stanley Tolman, who was the chairman and founder of the Travel Corporation and the Treadwright Foundation, sadly, we lost him as part of the member of the industry. His life's work included building over 40 award-winning brands and businesses, including Contiki, Trafalgar, Uniworld, and Red Carnation Hotels. He took over 2 million travelers a year across 70 countries. And in 2019, pre-pandemic, and in 2020, the company celebrated its centenary. So collectively, all of our love and wishes go to the Tolman family and everyone in the TTC family. We recognize this is a very sad moment, and our hearts and thoughts are with you. We now go into the stats. So what exactly is happening, and what do we need to know right now? As we have always been saying, the travel and tourism community has been hit badly in terms of labor shortages. My next slide is focusing very much on how many people have actually just said, even though the markets are opening up, the world is opening up, it's over and out. And this came from PwC, showing really the historic highs in terms of people who were fundamentally leaving the industry. Now, why I'm showing this is because it's not just accommodation, food services, leisure, and hospitality. It's any of the frontline jobs in the service trade. Because we've seen in the last year and a half, last 2 years, how many people have simply been unable to take the risk. take the risk of either the shutdowns, removing them from workplaces, reduced in the hospitality case, the number of people who can go into restaurants, the amount of service that can take place. And in retail, there's so much online retail that ultimately people are saying, I can't afford to be one of the people in the stores serving customers. So this is a really interesting indicator of how it's those frontline service roles across industries that are suffering. But no question, hospitality, travel, and tourism is at the top of the list in terms of people just saying, I can't take the risk in stopping work and then having to go back. Over to you, Professor.
Yeah, really interesting, especially how it's increasing. And it's nice to see that data was from PwC, who's one of our Intel partners that'll be sharing data with us on our next episode in 2 weeks' time. I've got something a little bit different. It's something I've talked about on and off for the last year and a half on Rise, which is the delivery battleground that's taking place, not only across the different delivery companies, but in fact, with the restaurants whose food they deliver. You can see two charts here from the McKinsey and Company report that came out a few weeks ago. The first one on the left, basically restaurant unit economics, demonstrating that it's already difficult for restaurants to make money. Usually their operating margins can be between 7 and 15% for a successful restaurant. Once you factor in any additional costs that they must pay for delivery, it ends up being a negative number, basically break even or losing money. So tough for restaurants to make money in the current model of delivery. Interestingly, if you look at the right side, the delivery platform unit economics, they're also not making any money. And we know this from reports that they've put out as some of the companies have gone public. And I'm bringing this up basically to say, here's been something a lot of people have pointed out as a positive of the lockdown, right? Restaurants and restaurant delivery companies figuring out how to work together, get food to people, and find additional sources of revenue that they could continue to benefit from post-pandemic. But if nobody's making money, who's going to continue this? And the only one really who's benefiting is the customer. Nothing against that, but it's just an indicator that while we may find new business models and new opportunities, figuring out how to make money from those continues to be a challenge. And it'll be interesting to see, I think, how this plays out over the next 18 to 24 months as some of these companies start to fade away due to the losses that they've been making.
Great share.
Thank you. We've got another great share from the Global Wellness Institute and Susie Ellis, who's prepared some interesting research for us that came out of a recent conference that she spoke at. So let's hear from Susie.
Hi, everyone. This is Susie Ellis. I'm chairman and CEO of the Global Wellness Institute. And I've been championing wellness in hospitality for a couple of decades now. I wanted to bring your attention to a few things that I think you might find interesting. While wellness has been trending as important to people and travelers in particular over the last decade, what has happened with COVID-19 is that the interest in wellness has increased dramatically around the world. You've probably noticed that yourself. Wellness is something now that every company, every person, every government now needs to pay attention to. The first one is what we call the global wellness economy. You can see it as a $4.5 trillion economy, and these, what we call bubbles, are in proportion to each other. So the larger the bubble, the larger the segment. These are revenue figures globally for a year. So you can see physical activity, nutrition, wellness, tourism, beauty, the spa economy. These are all signified here. And you'll notice there in purple is one called wellness real estate, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But this is an infographic that gives you a sense of what the wellness arena is part of. So this is the one I wanted to bring some attention to because we have figures now that are brand new. Figures actually that just came out last week. That's why I thought I would share this with you because these are brand new. The wellness real estate bubble was $135 billion in the previous chart. But now the new figures in 2020, those figures are now $275 billion. That is a doubling since 2017, and that includes the pandemic. So what it shows is that wellness real estate growth has outpaced construction growth in every region, even during the pandemic. So you might be wondering, what does real estate have to do with hospitality? And the reality is it has a lot to do with it, and it will have a lot more to do with it in the future. So let me just, first of all, define wellness real estate. Wellness real estate is homes, buildings that are proactively designed and built to support the holistic health of their occupants. And here are some hospitality brands that are going into real estate residential sales. Aman Resorts, Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, Mandarin Oriental, they just announced residences. The Montage Hotels and Resorts has a real estate sector. St. Regis Hotels and Resorts, Baccarat Residences, Residences by Raffles, and the Six Senses brand, which is probably one of the most progressive wellness brands out there. They have announced over 20 projects, either already open or in progress, that have residences. Just this past week, the Global Wellness Institute, I was just in New York, we had a symposium. It was a one-day event on wellness, real estate, and communities. And we unveiled these very new figures. So you're amongst the first to know about them. I thought you'd enjoy that. And so let me just end by saying thank you for having me, and make sure you add wellness not only to your life personally, but also to your profession and anything you're doing in hospitality. Thank you.
Great stuff. And, I've been working with Susie on and off for more than 10 years now, coming to speak at school, working with them in their conferences. And it's refreshing because they have good data. They really do look at things in a very scientific way. And people often talk about wellness, just like fitness, and oh yeah, that's a nice thing to have, but you can't make money from that, or it's not really a business. And she and her institute absolutely prove that not to be true, and really prove that there is a lot of money to be made here, a lot of money being transacted, and lots of opportunities, not only for investors and entrepreneurs, but also for people looking for career changes and new careers. So kudos to the Global Wellness Institute and Susie.
Indeed. And I think I love what you were saying as well, Damien. And it's fantastic that she's come on as an Intel partner and sharing information that is so fresh. What I also like as well is the fact that it demonstrates, as you say, initially the industry was seen as, pardon the pun, cosmetic, but now wellness and well-being have become part of the DNA of hospitality offerings, going from the hardware now to the software. And it's lovely that she called out, without knowing who our executive in residence is, Six Senses. But I think this is a shift where it's no longer a niche. It's now a part of the DNA of people's desire to go out and take care of themselves through their travel. So very interesting one. Thank you, Susie.
And staying with the idea of fresh, let's look at fresh headlines that are in the news. I've got one for you today. Marriott CEO juggles growth ambitions with plan to go net zero by 2050. When I first saw this headline, I didn't know what to think. On the one hand, great that these hospitality companies are taking sustainability seriously, taking climate change seriously, and making commitments to improving their role in the impacts on the environment. Net zero can't do much more than that. And then I saw this figure 2050, the date 2050. That is, do the math, 29 years from now. And I didn't know if that was ambitious or not. They see that word ambition. So I'm being quite honest. I was proud to see this, but concerned that this is even 10 years later than another climate accord that's been signed by hundreds of different companies. And I think it really comes down to, it's a big challenge for the hotel industry. We've talked about this. Marriott owns less than 10, I think, of the thousands of hotels in their system. So to get owners of the hotels on board, each of which has their own financial concerns, it's a struggle. It's not, like the airlines that own all their planes, or at least, and don't have to get as much buy-in from other stakeholders. So it is a particularly strong challenge for the hotel industry with this asset-light strategy where the hotels don't actually own their properties. I think employees are on board, customers are probably on board. I think investors understand the long-term need for a company like Marriott to be a leader in this as the largest hotel company. The issue is to get individual entrepreneurs and owners that may own one asset or more than one asset to also understand that the costs involved in this will pay off, not just in the bottom line of the hotel eventually, but it's going to be a requirement to do it. So hopefully we'll see that 2050 date be brought forward. And in fact, they said at the latest 2050. So check back with us on Rise in 29 years and see if Marriott was able to make this commitment come true.
I must say, Damian, I love that you brought this up because it actually emphasizes how people are going into reopening the tourism world, the hospitality world, with a higher degree of sensitivity. To your point, making these commitments is one thing, but what it takes to actually deliver on them is another. And I think this sensitization, knowing that you are a softie underneath, Damian, knowing that this sensitization is going to be very important to really developing a stronger industry is critical. And interestingly, it links to my headline, which I thought was really important to share from the point of view of, we talk about the industry opening up, we talk about all this pent up demand, we talk about all this excitement, but we have to look at really why are people leaving the industry? And what's very important is for all of the excitement of people going back out and traveling and staying in hotels and eating in restaurants, it's those frontline workers who are on the receiving end of all of that excitement, all of that energy, and quite honestly, a lot of pressure. That we know that their hotels and restaurants are struggling from the point of view of staff shortages. Those that are actually working are feeling that they're being bullied because people want so much and expect so much, and yet the service isn't there. They're feeling the burnout. And ultimately, they're saying, I've had a chance to reconsider over the last year and a half. I choose elsewhere. A reason why I share this, it is so important that we be sensitive, that as we open up the world to travel and tourism, we need to make sure that we are taking care of the people in the industry itself. And this is no longer just a nice to have. It is an expectation of both those working in the industry and those that are observing the industry and making sure that the people who are out there taking care of us socially are actually being taken care of by their employers. I thought this was really interesting and very raw and honest, quite honestly.
Yeah,
So.
I fully agree. And I think as we mentioned last episode, and I've been talking at school with my students and consulting clients, this is the fundamental challenge for the industry right now, is to figure this out. And I think you and I will be talking about this a little bit later as well.
Indeed. And that's why we talk about it, to say, where are the solutions? And it starts with being empathetic towards it. My video choice this week, interestingly, I had found this a little while ago. I banked it to be able to share it on Rise, and I had no idea how relevant it was going to be. I thought this was beautifully done because it shows that even if people are fully vaccinated and they have their negative PCR tests for COVID and they're able to book their flights, it does not mean you're able to go. And that uncertainty, as we've spoken about, is a huge barrier to getting the industry going. Now, I had planned this video. It was all set to go. I did not expect that, as much as I'm in the industry and I love experiencing these challenges, I've done my hotel quarantine, I've gone through all the issues of long haul from a red list country, I've done all of that. This week, I was supposed to be today on stage at the IATA AGM emceeing for 2 days. And at the airport on Saturday night in Toronto, I was denied entry into the US. It is a gutting feeling, especially going on a work assignment, to be told you can't go to the plane. And horrifying to have to call your client and say, I'm sorry, I'm letting you down from the biggest stage and the biggest honor of the entire year. So I'm very grateful. Richard Quest and Robin Curnow from CNN have stepped up. They're taking over my role for the next 2 days. But ultimately, people want the peace of mind, which is why I thought this video was perfect for right here and right now in this next normal. Over to you, Jessica, please.
When I was young,
No, please,
never
no.
needed anyone. Planning a trip was so much fun.
Front desk. Yes, hello, I'm so...
Those days are done.
I got you.
All by yourself. Don't have to be all by yourself anymore.
You look a little lost. I can't find my hotel. Oh.
Don't have to go
Oh.
all by
Why? This is not normal. No.
So?
Like a great companion, Expedia has your back throughout your journey. It matters who you travel with.
I'm still in shock that anyone would try to deny you anything, but great video. And I hadn't seen that one before. And I didn't know you had been denied entry until you just told me. So
I should be broadcasting from Boston, but I send great love and warm wishes from Toronto.
I thought that was not where you were supposed to be. All right, well, we'll talk more about that later. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's time to go back to our poll and see what the results were from our question. All right, Anita. Look, 0% sustainability practices. Neil's not going to be happy about that. So I'm curious, location, brand, cancellation policies, it's pretty much the same things as pre-pandemic, except for the safety protocols. Probably something we wouldn't even have listed as an option before. But the fact that nobody identified sustainability practices as most important, not real encouraging.
But I'm drawn to the cancellation policies. More than 1 in 4 people are saying that's what's actually critical right now. We never even looked at that because there was never a fear of needing to cancel, quite honestly. So really great. But thank you, as always, to everyone for joining the conversation. For those of you on the Zoom platform able to vote, for those of you on YouTube and Facebook Live, please do try to register through Zoom so we can get your voice as part of the conversation. And now we go to the conversation, and I'm very excited to introduce our 2 executives in residence. They are, as I said, they have been at the forefront of sustainable tourism before the S word started becoming part of everyone's vocabulary. They are 2 great leaders joining us from across the world. We have one joining us, hopefully with a glass of wine beside him, coming in from Australia, Darrell Wade, the co-founder and CEO of Intrepid Travel Group, 32 years, 7 continents, thousands of trips, adventure travel experts. And he's also the Vice President of Sustainability at the World Travel and Tourism Council. He is joined from Portugal with Neil Jacobs, the CEO of Six Senses Hotels, Resorts and Spas, the global portfolio with, as they say, a passion for wellness, community, sustainable design, and smiles. And I suspect, Mr. Jacobs, that line is going to become even more important to people in the next normal of travel. So to you both, a loving welcome to Rise.
Hi there.
Thanks, Anita. Great to be here.
Fabulous. Nice to see everybody.
Welcome to both of you. I'm going to lead off, Anita, just by bringing up those poll results, which hopefully you saw. Neil, I'll start with you. Nobody identified sustainable practices as the fundamental thing they're thinking about when booking the trip. So does that surprise you? Does it disappoint you? Or is that what you expect? And what do you think about it?
Well, it certainly disappoints me, particularly given, the group and the audience. And it does surprise me, but maybe that's because we are known as a sustainability brand. So our guests come to us, they know what they're going to get. And it's definitely a huge part of our business and why people are coming to Six Senses. But I think it's a bigger conversation that maybe we'll get to about, the nature of sustainability, what drives that, what are people looking for? And I'd love to chat about that a little bit later on, because we obviously, and I know many of our colleagues are driving much stronger sustainability agendas today than ever before. So it was a little surprising for sure.
Okay. And Darrell, I'll ask you something a little bit different. You guys talk about responsible travel, and I saw on your website, top 10 ways the public can be responsible travelers. Do you really see people wanting to be responsible travelers in mass numbers, or is that an afterthought for a small number of people, which would sort of coalesce with the results of our poll?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, Damien. And, in terms of the poll, I'm not at all surprised about that. It's pretty much what I would have expected. And, we find, and Neil's probably the same, I suspect, we find a real difference in people before they travel and after they travel. And so before people travel, sustainability isn't on their agenda, generally speaking. It's really low. And I don't think that's surprising, because you think, well, people are taking a holiday. And so they're thinking about where they're going to go, how much they're going to pay, yada, yada. They're not thinking about, they're not booking a sustainable, are they? There's no such thing. On the contrary, though, once people have actually travelled on the ground with you and they see what you do and they see some of your practices and they see the destination, then sustainability really elevates. And we've got, be 25 years of data to actually back this up, that before people go, it's not high on their list. After people travel, it's really high on their list. And interestingly enough, that same traveller who comes back year after year after year, it definitely goes up their curve as they travel, as over time.
I have a question for you both, and especially with my work in the diplomatic space, I like playing with words and looking really carefully at words. And I'm a fundamental believer that one of the great barriers of sustainability is the word sustainability, because it's to say I want a sustainable business as opposed to bankrupt. I want wildlife to be sustainable as opposed to extinct, and even responsible travel as opposed to irresponsible travel. But to that point, and knowing that RISE is there to really help people in the next normal and re-engineering the future of travel, I'd love to get from both of you your point of view on how do we talk about sustainability in a way that people can get. And we're not just slapping down the S word, but actually getting people to understand what are we really talking about so that it's credible language, because I fear that the word is losing a lot of its credibility. Darrell, from
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more. And to be honest, I get a bit tired of it myself. So, I think we've really got to look beyond the word and actually look into what is demonstrated, in terms of what actually happens. And so, I think talking about sustainability is just another form of greenwash. So really, you've got to either be able to show to prospective customers solid data in terms of, which you can track against various ESG metrics and put that in some form of annual report or whatever, or on your website, or show to your travellers when they're on the ground actually what it means. So don't talk about it, show it.
Great. No?
Yeah, I agree totally with Darrell. I think, but I think the data is obviously critical, but I actually feel it's more important to demonstrate when a guest is in your hotel or wherever to show them exactly what you're doing. But more than just show them, it's more about engaging your guests in the practices that you do or you offer. Some of the activities that you offer. I mean, whether it's even at a kids club. I mean, for example, we have something with children where they're not in front of computer screens, but they are out and they are planting and they are growing food and engaging in sustainable activity. The same with all our guests, and that's really kind of where it shows up. And that's where you make the impact. But I'd love to, if I may, just jump back to the previous comment about travelers not choosing. I mean, I kind of believe. So I was more surprised, obviously, than Darrell was by that. But I kind of believe that if you have a choice of going to two hotels that are in the same or a similar location, and one really does demonstrate a sustainable practice, and the other one doesn't, we believe that people will choose the right thing and go to a hotel that has, an approach, a culture that really is protective of the environment, community, and all the other things that make up that S word that you talked about. So I'm kind of more encouraged in the future than that poll would have demonstrated, actually.
Neil, just to back you up on this, in another one of my hats, I chair an organisation called Travellist, which is a consortia of online travel platforms that are working on sustainability through a data-led approach. And one of our partners is Booking. And we've got some sustainability criteria booked into the metrics that they show, just like, what kind of room is it? Have you got TVs, all that? It'll have some sustainability attributes. But interestingly, only half the time does a customer see whether those sustainability attributes are being viewed or not. And what's really been fascinating, this has been live for about 3 months now, is that there is actually a propensity for people to book a hotel if there is a positive sustainability attribute showing. So, the price is the same, everything else about the property is the same, only half the people see it, but those who see it have got more likely to book that hotel than those who don't, which is a great thing, I think.
Well, I'll take that 50% to start with. 50% ain't so bad,
You make a great point, Darrell, and Neil, you've mentioned it as well, that it's what people see. People don't necessarily see utilization of gray water, changing of how the anatomy of the buildings are now more sustainable. Whereas, Neil, you've built a beautiful brand, which admittedly, before I had the pleasure of knowing you, I'd gone to a Six Senses property in Thailand, where your circular economy and your living sustainability is on show, is part of the experience. So I think a lot of it is, well, what people see. Is it just the technical re-engineering of a building, or is it the engineering of the traveler experience and how that plays into the brand itself? Damien, you've always got great perspective on the hotel industry being able to actually do what they need to do.
I do, but I want to ask something slightly different, then I'll come to that one. I just want to challenge Darrell and Neil. Neil, you said the guests want this, and Darrell, you said in that data, the price being the same, the people will choose the stability. But my question is, can the price really be the same? And so I guess for Neil, it was, you're operating largely at the luxury level where discretionary income is available and people are probably not as concerned about a slight price difference. And so my question is, at the lower spectrum, is it mid-scale hotels, at budget hotels, where every penny counts and price differences have a huge impact on demand? And this links back to my headline about Marriott, can these owners of these budget and mid-scale hotels really afford to invest in this and not see and then probably pass on that cost to the traveling public, and then not see the same bookings that their competitors who are not investing in sustainability will achieve? So really, can we make financial sense at that level of the industry? Darrell?
Yeah, Damien, I think one of the things that I'd perhaps challenge you on is that underlying assumption that it costs more to be sustainable. Yeah. Quite often, in fact, that is not the case. I think a lot of people assume it, but if you use less power, you're saving bills, for instance. You use less water, you're saving bills. And so quite often, sustainable practices are actually saving the hotel money. So it's not all one way by any means. Neil, you would know more about that than I would.
Yeah. There may be a slight uptick in development cost when you are building the hotel. That is certainly not as great. If you'd asked me this question 10, 15 years ago, I'd have probably said there was, a 20%, 15 to 20% increase if you were to really do it sustainably. Today, I would say maybe it's 5%. But, as Darrell just said, the operating savings more than pay for that increase in development costs in a very, very short time if you operate it properly. So I think aside from that a little bit in the initial development, how you operate certainly should cost you less. B, your approach to community and outreach, which I kind of is part of sustainability as well, should certainly not cost you more. So I think it's a little bit outdated. I also think it's incumbent upon the industry to, and we are seeing this, it's not just us, there are other companies that are engaging today. And your point about, contracts and owners and so on, if that culture exists within an organization, as an industry, and we can convince owners that it's the right thing to do, and there will be benefits that will come out of that. We just don't, as an industry, we're just not strong enough when we're negotiating those contracts with the hotel owner community to say, listen, this is what it is. This is what we want to do, and if you don't want to do it, then you need to find perhaps another operator. And the minute we start to man up a bit more or put a little more muscle into it, we will bring this owner community with us for sure. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think, Darrell, you were talking about the data from this group and online bookings, and Neil, you guys have a wealth of data and past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's about educating, which hopefully we're helping to do
Sure.
here, investors, students, employees, customers, that sustainability can be interesting, learning how to plant. It can be very easy to do. It can pay for itself. And I think that's a fundamental challenge or mission that we've all got to take on over the next years, to really educate people about the fact that this can be done cost effectively and for a competitive advantage, as Darrell was getting at.
Yeah, by the way, I think, I think one of the other really interesting things to talk about is sustainability in the context of your staff. Anita was talking earlier about potential shortfalls in staffing levels and, pay not being so good and so forth. But if an operator takes a really long-term view to staff, like a sustainable view to staff, you'll find that, yes, you might pay slightly higher wages or have slightly better conditions. However, you also find that your staff turnover is a lot lower, which means your staff training costs are a lot lower. Also, you'll find that the staff engagement is a lot higher, which means that your customers are also happier. And so, you end up making more money. So, taking an engaging view towards staff and bringing them into being a part of the story just pays dividends in spades. And Neil, again, I'm sure you found that just as much as we have.
For sure. I mean, I would love to just jump on the back of that comment and refer back to Susie for a minute, or Susie Ellis, because, it's interesting. When my group bought Six Senses in 2012, we, who had always been have a very strong sustainability agenda, but we found two very separate departments. There was sustainability and there was wellness, and they didn't talk to each other. Where we are today, in reality, wellness and sustainability in many ways is one conversation. And the piece, what you were talking about, Darrell, about sustainable approach to employees. I mean, we just, for example, have something called Mission Wellness, which is our employee, we call them hosts, wellness program, which took us a long time to develop, but it covers everything from how they live to how their health is, to financial wellness, to all of these things. So to me, you can substitute. We could call it mission sustainability or mission wellness. It's exactly the same thing, and I think that's a huge part of our ability to retain employees is that's a very real and honest approach to them. The statistic that Susie brought up about the growth of wellness real estate, I would apply the same conversation to. It's because it's about creating well environments. That is how you build them, and that is using sustainable materials and caring about VOC and off-gassing and all those things that we'll talk about in sustainable construction. But the growth in that segment, as she indicated, over the past 3 or 4 years, and showing up predominantly in the US at $275 billion today, is huge. And these are the same owners that build hotels as well. So they know what we're doing, and that is changing. That is changing. And that data is an absolute indicator of where I think this is going.
Absolutely. And interesting, in terms of the data that we have, I'm excited to say we have a lot of questions coming through. But I would not have thought that of all the episodes we've done, this would be the one that would have the rush of questions. But it looks like the backstage has quite a backlog of questions. So I'm going to, Damien, if you're okay with it, pass it over to the backstage.
Yeah. Grace?
Yes, we have had quite a few questions in. To start with, we have had one emailed in through the week that says, we talk about sustainability and climate crisis, but what difference can one person make?
I mean, I think it's one step at a time. I mean, we talk about the big subjects, certainly, within hospitality, and it's plastic free, it's climate change, it's carbon offsets. I mean, these are the huge topics. But really, when you're on the ground, in my view, it's about the culture that an organization is able to engender, to embody, and it's the little details. Not everyone is going to be able to come up with a solution for climate change, right? But we are able to grow food. We are able to conserve water and energy. We are able to do all these other things that if the right, as I say, the right culture is in place, we can all make a difference. And as I say, it's the small steps that will take us to where we need to be. We did. I tell you a very quick story, and I don't want to talk too much. We're on a huge plastic-free mission, which I could talk for hours about. But the first thing we did, we went into the kitchens and we told chefs that they can't cook sous vide anymore. So all my fancy, well-trained Michelin chefs and more said, "What are you talking about? We can't cook." I said, "Of course you can cook. People used to cook before you had plastic bags that you could put the fish in or the meat in. So they said, what do you want us to do?" I said, "I don't know, but find a way." And we said, as of 30 days from now, no more sous vide, no more plastic bags in the kitchen. And somehow we found a way. And the food tastes pretty good, So it's all up here. It's all up here. But we can change that.
Thanks. Grace, another question?
Yes, of course. We have one in from one of our regular viewers, Shrey, who says, do you believe there's to be a reassessment of traditional sustainable practices from countries like India, etc., to reintegrate them into commercial and social practices?
Darrell, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think there does have to be a reassessment of sustainability practices globally. And so, whether the person is in India or America or Australia or wherever, it doesn't really matter. I kind of, as a reference point, go back to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They're for the whole world. They're not for India or anywhere else. They're for everyone. And so I just think, those 17 goals, and then unpack them into the sub goals and attributes and so forth. I think that's where the action is, and that's where you can take effect. And just going back to that earlier question about what difference can one person make? I kind of think it's the wrong question, because I kind of think, well, we're all in the world, aren't we? And everyone is an individual in that huge world, and we've got to ask ourselves, well, what kind of world do we want in the future? And so therefore, what conversations do we have to get us there? And what kind of actions do we have to do to get us there? And it is a collective thing, but the individual is just as important as the collective, I think.
Thanks, Darrell. Grace, I think you guys have time for one more question, please.
Lovely. Thank you. Again, from another one of our regulars, Steve. Steve would like to know, engineering a sustainability component into a new build project comes with costs. I do not hear them speaking of the cost to retrofit sustainability practices into existing hotel assets. Can they please address this, panelists?
Yeah, Neil, I think that goes back a little bit what we were talking about before. New build, I can see. My concern is with the hundreds of thousands of hotels that currently exist. Tough. What do you think?
No, it's difficult. There's no question. It's way more difficult. And, that even shows up in, if we take LEED, for example, the LEED standards for a retrofit are way less onerous than they are for a new build, obviously. So, there's things you can do when you renovate the materials that you use, particularly in furnishing, the FF&E aspect of things, the operating supply aspect. So maybe you can't kind of change the materials in which the building was made, but there's still plenty of other things you can do around lighting, around energy, and so on that will help. But also the big impact is how you operate as well. It's one thing about the building, but it's how you operate, the intention that you have to operate. And it's not just about if you don't want your towel washed, leave it there for 3 days. I mean, there's so many things that can be done. I mean, just take kind of bathroom amenities, for example. If people stop using, little plastic bottles, just the impact that would make as an industry if we banned those. I mean, there's big things that hotels can still do.
And I love what you're saying, that it's about actually start with waste mitigation and then you go into the engineering, but just stop the wastage to begin with.
Yeah, for sure.
Stunning. It's great.
And in fact, the industry is making very significant measures too at a structural platform level. So, the little bottles of shampoo or whatever that are infamous, I mean, they just won't exist in 2 or 3 years' time at all. A lot of them aren't existing now. So, incrementally, things are being ticked off. And in collective, though, we're making some very big progress at the moment.
What I find interesting as well to that point is that it's also coming from a government side with green incentives only, green grants, green investments, that unless that sustainability component is built into it, governments aren't going to give the go-ahead. So I think that's also a really powerful driver of that change. I have a question for you both before we wrap. Our audience is watching. There's been question in the past around, seriously, the hospitality industry has to make up money for losses in the last 18 months. Everyone's racing around this pent-up demand. Is the hospitality industry going to take sustainability as seriously in the future as they've talked about it in the recent past? Why should we be confident?
Well, I guess I'm not sure that we should necessarily be confident. I think it's just something that will happen, and I think companies that have historically put sustainability high on their agenda have tended to grow faster than ones that haven't. So I think that vested self-interest will continue to kind of percolate through the industry. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily a new thing or a new trend. I think it's just a continuation which will continue.
Well, I certainly agree with that. And, just purely from a commercial perspective and an image perspective, as Darrell is saying. But I'm a little more optimistic. I think that, it was that and wellness, and if you consider it one, was relevant pre-COVID, but is even more relevant as we come out of COVID. And I think people's thinking has shifted somewhat. I think it's been a period that has also brought a bunch of positive things that we've talked about a lot. And I think care for the planet, care for people around them, kind of using these big buckets of comments, I think is actually stronger than ever. So I am optimistic that humanity is starting to really take it seriously. Yeah.
I'm going to ask Damien if you want to do the close, but from my side, huge loving thanks to you both. What a delight to have this conversation. Thank you.
Great to be here.
I'm always a little skeptical to talk about sustainability. Back in the day, ecotourism, generally a lot of talk, everybody means well, not a lot of evidence, but I'm slightly more encouraged after the conversation today. And I think this goes part of the ways towards educating people. It's not with all the answers, at least to recognize how important the discussion is. So thanks to both you, Darrell, and you, Neil. Thanks so much for taking time to be with us. And hopefully we'll get to chat with you again in the future. And if not, hopefully maybe see you in the Lausanne campus. Thanks both.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great chat, Anita.
That was fabulous. And I loved how they debated between themselves. That's case study execs in residence, I must say.
Yeah, that was very good. And speaking of debating with each other, it's time for Total Knockout. Grace, what are we debating today?
Thank you, Demian. Today we are debating, will travel and hospitality company commitments to improving employee well-being remain the norm? Anita, take it away.
I know, Damien, it's very easy to say, yes, companies are paying lip service to it. It's too expensive. No one's going to put a spa in their offices and their corporate headquarters. But to me, it goes back to what I said earlier. The world has become sensitized, much more sensitized to employee well-being in every industry. And so policies might not yet have changed because policies take time and they have to go through processes. But the attitude is changing. We see companies that are going to and trialing 4-day work weeks, whether it's Unilever in New Zealand, Kickstarter. We saw Microsoft in Japan having a 40% increase in productivity because they said to people, great, go to 4 days. Other companies are recognizing work from home works for a lot of people because they don't want to spend the time commuting. So that flexibility is being put in place. Well-being is about being flexible to what works better for people to keep the company working most effectively. And I think that's going to continue because it's not just people looking at their staff and how they're working. They have been working in a much more well-being based context. So I think, yes, it's going to continue. And we know that governments as well, Spain, Ireland, Japan, are also encouraging worked weeks that are 4 days itself. So I think that the commitments are going to be continue to be explored, continue trialed, and continuing to keep a well-being of employees at their heart. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Nah, you're wrong. You're wrong. So first, I think when we talk about policies, it's really coming down to a value in the organization. What do we value? And value is about culture. Cultures take a long time to change. They're ingrained in the organization. I just don't see companies changing the values and the norms that they commit to very quickly or very sustainably. It's expensive. Again, I'm back to the money side of this, right? Work hours. People are working too long. They're working weekends. They're working holidays. They're low paid. These things will be very expensive to change. We may be able to change them in the short term with some quick measures, but restaurants and hotels operate on pretty thin margins. So anything that's going to increase the cost. And yes, Darrell said, we may reduce turnover if we treat people well. I agree. But in the short term, the companies are going to be afraid to raise wages without seeing the direct benefit. So I think they're only doing this now because there's a labor shortage. Once things settle down, once people are willing to work in the industry again, and we're not fighting for labor all the time, we're going to resort back to the practices. And I give you one example, minimum wage. The leading companies fighting the increase in minimum wage in the United States the last 10 years have been hospitality companies, have been hotels, have been the restaurant companies. So that demonstrates that if they're willing to change that now, it's just because of the situation we're in. It's not a fundamental belief that that's what the industry should do. I took a little bit more time than you, so I'll give you a chance to say one last thing.
I'm curious. Interesting pivot, but I don't think it's going to work. Well-being is not only about wages. That's not it. You've equated it to wages. That's not how I take well-being. It is about culture, and the culture has been forced to change in the last 18 months because everyone's been stuck at home working. So I hear what you're saying, but I certainly don't equate well-being to simply paying people more.
Fair enough. Let's say instead of wages, it's investing in our people's well-being, which part of that is a work-life balance, which part of that is salary. Okay, Grace, you want to take things over?
Yes, thank you. So now it is time to choose your winner. Do you agree with Anita that the world has become more sensitized to employee well-being and policies haven't changed yet, but the attitudes have? And this will continue with governments encouraging 4-day work week, and well-being is not just about wages. Or do you agree with Demian that Anita is wrong? The values within the organization are to do with their cultures, which are ingrained and take a long time to change, and it is too expensive to change long term. Pick your winner.
Before you show the result, can I just say, as good as Anita's and my debate can sometimes be, Grace's synthesis from hearing it live and putting it down into 20 seconds is amazing. All right, Grace, let's see what people said.
Wow.
I hate winning when it's these things because I wish everybody did believe the rosy picture you have of the world. That would be a nicer world to live in.
I shall say nothing. But thank you to everyone who voted. Very grateful, and to all of the people in the Hodari family. Just appreciate taking over the votes.
It's always easy to say things won't change. Okay, so we've got something new we mentioned last week. It's our career opportunity of the week. We're inviting companies to basically, post your interesting opportunity for somebody here on our on our show. And today we've got one for a client onboarding assistant in the UK, a competitive market salary, opportunity to join a multidisciplinary firm that specializes in inward investment businesses, assist with compliance and project work, checks on clients and related parties at the onboarding stage, and regular ongoing basis. For more information, just email us here at riseweekly2020@gmail.com, and we will forward your inquiry on to our partner, which is Arlington.
Out there, and we are excited to be able to be a channel for connecting you to those and those future roles. Stunning.
Okay, and next week, Anita?
Yay! Actually 2 weeks' time, on October 18th, we have a very interesting one. Our next episode, Your Kingdom Awaits. We have Her Royal Highness Princess Dana Faraz from the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and we have Amr al-Madani from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. These are two enormous champions about keeping culture, arts, and heritage at the heart, ultimately, of tourism experience development. Really, really interesting conversation we're going to be having. Please do join us. It will be an interesting one. And our Prince Hodari is very much excited to meet the princess. So over to you, sir, for the close.
I am actually excited to meet her. I think it was a great episode, and I'm looking forward to that episode as well because PwC and STR, a co-star company, are going to be presenting some really interesting data for our data dashes. So looking forward to that. Anita, sorry that you were denied entry into the United States. I promise it wasn't me that called and warned that you were coming in. I will see you in 2 weeks, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Indeed. And for everyone, as always, all of our episodes are on our website. You can see it, rise-weekly.com, bottom left corner of your screen. Please send through questions. Please send through any guests you want to see on the program. And until we see you in 2 weeks' time, stay well, stay safe, stay confident, and stay with Rise.